Chapter 10 2nd of April Bucha. The Russian forces were retreating very rapidly from the area of Kiev Oblast. Alexei was helping the soldiers in their mission to reclaim previously occupied territories, to fortify defenses there, and to help out the local civilians. Over the past 2 days, he found himself mostly on the road. It felt good to be part of the effort of liberating Ukrainian territories from the Russian forces. Even if he didn't do any active fighting himself, he knew that all the help given to the army and the civilians was useful. He felt hopeful in seeing the enemy retreating so quickly. Could the war be finally getting over? He kept thinking again and again. The truck full of soldiers and volunteers where Alexei was now arrived in a part of Bucha. The occupiers had only left it very recently and the area was still getting secured. Alexei remembered that Maria and Alina, whom he found in the woods over a week ago, said that they traveled from Bucha and that the enemy soldiers killed many people here. He could now see the scale and intensity of the devastation incurred on Bucha with his own eyes, and it was dreadful beyond his imagination. The place was turned inside out. Broken roads, shattered buildings, destroyed military vehicles left in the middle of the streets, trash and building debris strewn everywhere. But this was not the worst of it. Alexei held his stare on several dead bodies lying in random places all along the road. Those did not look like military personnel. They were civilians. Innocent civilians were murdered and left to rot in the middle of the street. The group Alexei was traveling with kept going further, and each new street they passed looked just as disturbing and ghastly as the last. A lot of the violence here looked deliberate. One of the soldiers began as he stopped beside Alexei. "This is the worst I've seen so far." "Yes, me too," Alexei stated whilst feeling nauseous. "What the hell did they do here?" "Russian world, what else?" Alexei was starting to feel unwell and homesick. The state of this place was scaring him, and he was apprehensive about what else waited for him here, and what other horrors he would see. He knew he had to be strong and continue helping, but this place was much worse than the others he'd seen after the occupiers were gone. Whatever he would see here, he knew it would haunt him forever and leave a permanent imprint in his mind. 2nd of April, somewhere near Kropivnitsky. Vadim, Olesya and Ksenia were driving for the last few days and making regular stops in the larger settlements and cities. Within the next hour or so, they would be reaching Kropivnitsky city. Ksenia was feeling a lot more relaxed as she believed the worst was behind them. They were out of Kharkiv safely and far from the front line. Olesya was still tense, however, so Ksenia was sitting at the back seat of the car to keep her company and help her to feel calmer. Olesya was leaning on her shoulder for the last half an hour and sitting quietly. They had all heard the news already about the retreat of the Russian forces near Kiev and the northern parts of Ukraine. Those news were giving them hope and the anticipation of a possible end of this war in the near future. "Maybe we'll end up returning to Kharkiv very soon," Ksenia said, feeling a little hopeful. "The Russian forces appear to be on the run already." "Don't be too hasty," Vadim responded with some pessimism. "Even if they retreat from Kharkiv Oblast, the city is still way too close to the border. They can continue shelling it for as long as the war continues. I guess it's best to stay somewhere safer for now then. Unfortunately, nowhere in Ukraine is safe at the moment, but some places are a safer bet than others." "I don't think anywhere is safe," Olesya spoke up at this point. "Russian authorities do not seem to care about any international agreements. If they feel like attacking any other country, they'll do it, and the rest of the world will just continue watching the injustices unfold and do very little to help." "Let's wait and see," Vadim commented on what she said. "Some help is coming our way from other countries. It's just happening slowly. We need to stay strong and endure until there's enough support." Ksenia thought about what both of them said. It was hard to know how the events would unfold and what could be done to stop this brutal invasion. Her thoughts were interrupted by something she saw up ahead. It was a vehicle laying on its side at one of the edges of the road, a grey van. Vadim was the first to speak. "Something happened here." "Shall we stop and see if anyone is still there? They might be needing help," Ksenia suggested. "All right, but don't take too long. Whoever caused this van to tip over could still be around." They stopped their car just behind the van. For a few seconds, all three of them just looked ahead, as if expecting someone to come out of the van. Then Vadim opened his car door and got out. Ksenia and Olesia followed suit. "Shit!" Vadim exclaimed. "What?" Olesia reacted sharply. "There are bullet holes on the side of this van. I didn't notice them from back there. It was being shot at. Does that mean Russian troops are in the area?" Ksenia asked with a sense of fear building up inside her. "I hope not," replied Vadim and continued approaching the back of the van. Ksenia looked around in all directions just to be sure it was safe. There were mainly fields stretching all around, so it was possible to see very far into the distance in every direction. She couldn't see anything suspicious. It was peaceful. Even the air felt calm, as though nothing ever happened here. Vadim pulled on one of the doors at the back of the van and got it opened. Ksenia walked closer and looked inside. What she saw shocked her to the very core. Several people were lying dead inside it and covered in blood. She could see the front windscreen of the van from the back, and it was riddled with bullet holes and splashes of blood. "I think I'm going to be sick," Ksenia said whilst feeling like a cold blade was bursting out of her stomach. Olesia turned away in an instant and didn't even get any closer to the van to see inside it. Vadim continued looking, startled and depressed. A feminine gasp came all of a sudden from the pile of people inside the van. All three of them swiftly turned towards the sound, utterly surprised. "Someone's alive!" Ksenia exclaimed. "Stay here," Vadim instructed and then climbed inside. Another gasp came, followed by heavy breathing and pain grunts. Vadim moved a couple of corpses to the side and pulled out a young teenage girl. Her clothes were drenched in blood, but she didn't appear to have any serious injuries herself. The girl was in a state of shock and began crying gently. "Are you hurt?" Vadim asked her as he pulled her out from the pile of corpses closer to the back doors of the van and began checking her for any injuries. "My head hurts," she admitted and sat up. "A helicopter appeared out of nowhere. It shot at us. The others got hit. It didn't get me as I was at the back." "Hey, it will be okay, dear." Ksenia put her hand on the girl's shoulder and tried to calm her. "What is your name?" "Lera." "Where were you driving from, Lera?" "Zaporizhia. Well, Mariupol actually. We stopped at Zaporizhia and then got some more passengers and continued further to get to Vinnytsia." Ksenia was both shocked and amazed that this brave girl managed to get out of Mariupol, a place that everyone heard was going through hell. "Well, we're going to Vinnytsia too. You should come with us, it will be safer." "First we should get her some medical help," Vadim pointed out. "She was lucky not to get shot, but she's still concussed from the van toppling over." "How far is it to Kropivnitsky?" "Perhaps around 40 minutes or so. Let's make haste. The sooner we get there, the sooner we can find a hospital and get her some medical help." Lera got out of the van, but struggled to walk by herself, so Ksenia kept holding and supporting her. Olesia was seeing all this and tears were running down her face. "This is exactly what happened to Anton," she said quietly as Ksenia came closer. Ksenia nodded with a saddened look on her face and continued helping Lera to the car. Vadim and Olesia followed them. It was tragic seeing so many innocent people trying to get to safety and getting mindlessly killed. When they were all inside the car and positioned comfortably, Vadim started the engine of the car and drove off. 2nd of April. Mykolaiv. "Alright then, Solomia, the senior management has approved your request," Vera stated after seeking Solomia out in one of the wards. "Is this about Zlata?" "Yes, I have some paperwork for you to sign. Here." Solomia took a sheet of paper from her and had a look. It was merely a confirmation that approval was granted and that Zlata would be in Solomia's care and Solomia would be solely responsible for the girl's well-being. Solomia took out a pen and signed the sheet. "Perfect. There's no better person to look after her," Vera said. "When we asked her if she wanted to come and live with you, she agreed right away. You two have bonded very closely. I'm impressed." "That we have," Solomia confirmed. "Great. Well, she'll be discharged tomorrow. Her condition has been stable for several days and she's continuing to recover. I think that is in large part thanks to you," Vera praised her. "In other news, more wounded soldiers have just arrived. Can you help out in providing care for them?" "Of course." Vera mentioned in which ward the wounded were delivered, and Solomia proceeded. When Solomia got there, she saw a lot of tattered and bloodied military clothes laying in a large pile in the corridor. It was apparent that some of the soldiers were wounded quite severely, and their clothes needed to be removed completely and discarded. When she entered one of the wards where the injured were brought, she saw 3 soldiers there, each one on a separate bed. One nurse was there already providing care. Solomia approached the soldier laying at the very end of the room. He looked unconscious and was turned away, facing the wall. Solomia came even closer and tried to turn him so that she could get a closer look at what happened to him. As soon as she touched him, he awoke and turned around sharply, looking all over the room in confusion. He was disoriented, but otherwise Solomia could not see any major injuries. "Where am I?" he asked in a mild sense of panic. "You're in a hospital." "What city?" "Mykolaiv." "Oh, thank God, I made it." Solomia noticed that he was wearing a Russian army uniform. He must have been another enemy soldier that was captured and needed treatment. "You made it, but the rest of your unit are dead," Solomia stated firmly. "My unit? Oh, you're mistaken. I'm not one of the orcs." "It doesn't matter. We provide medical care for everyone, regardless of whether they're Ukrainian, Russian, or some other nationality." "It does matter. I am not a Russian soldier. My name is Roman Bilik. I was stationed in Kherson. They took me as a prisoner when they took control of the city. For a whole month, they beat and humiliated us until we broke out of there. Only about a dozen of us survived. 3 of us headed here to speak with your commanders and send them a message." "What message?" "I can't give you the details. I need to speak to your commanders. All I can say is that things in Kherson will be changing. There will be a lot of partisan activity there in the weeks to come. We're hoping to collaborate with the forces here." "Alright, I'll inform them of your request, but you need to stay here as you're in no condition to be up and about yet." "I know. One of us stepped on a landmine and died. I was thankfully not too close, but the shockwave from the explosion tossed me aside, and I can't remember anything after that." Solomia inspected his arms carefully and noticed a handful of mild burns. They weren't serious, but it was a good idea to apply an ointment, which she began looking for in a nearby medicine cabinet. Roman suddenly remembered something and sat up. "I need also to get in contact with someone. A new friend I made during my time in captivity wanted for his wife to know that he is alive, and he asked me to relay that message. I intend to keep that promise, as I know how important it is for loved ones to be informed of something such as this." "Okay, don't get out of bed. I'll go and get someone. They'll direct you to the right people," Solomia said, and decided to appease his request, as he seemed determined to get up and carry them out himself, which was not the best thing to do in his condition. "Thank you," Roman showed his appreciation. Solomia hastily walked out of the room and decided that she needed to find Vera and relay Roman's request to her. If this man was being truthful, then it was important that his requests were taken seriously, as this would greatly help their forces in pushing the enemy back and eventually liberating Kherson. 2nd of April, Kherson. It was evening time and Taras finally reached his apartment building. It took a few days for him and the other surviving prisoners to sneak into Kherson and to remain inconspicuous so not to draw attention to themselves from the enemy soldiers who were now stationed in many places all over the city. The other survivors separated from him and he was now all alone, finally back home. After a month of captivity, he could finally be somewhere safe. He went up several flights of stairs till he reached his apartment's front door. Of course, he did not have his apartment keys anymore, as all his personal possessions were taken during his captivity, and he never saw a trace of most of them. However, he came prepared. On the way here, he found a couple of wires that he could use as a lockpick. Serving in police for several years, lockpicking was something he learned when tracking down criminals and locating them in their hiding spots. He looked around to make sure there was nobody in the vicinity. He did not want the neighbors asking questions in case they saw something. When he confirmed that it was clear, he knelt down slightly, inserted the wires into the lock, and began patiently picking the lock. When he heard a satisfactory click, he felt pleased that he had not gone rusty on this useful skill. When inside his apartment, he locked the door, not wanting to be disturbed. The apartment was just as he left it. A warm feeling of comfort took over and surrounded him. For a whole month, he had to put up with filthy and cramped conditions, and threats of being beaten and humiliated at any moment, waking or otherwise. For the first time in a long time, he could relax. Walking through the apartment, he began thinking of his family again, missing them, wishing he could at least speak to them for a few seconds and to hear their voices. He entered his and his wife's bedroom and gazed around, taking it all in as if afraid this place would get smitten from existence. As he approached the wardrobe, he couldn't help himself. He took out one of Vika's favorite dresses and smelled it. There were still mild traces of her perfume on it. He remembered her delicate touch and her compassionate voice, wishing she was near so that he could hug her. He spent several minutes in the bedroom, looking through each item of her clothing and remembering when she wore each one of them. After that, he walked into the room of both of his sons. Again, he stood for a few moments and took the views of the room in, trying to make sure he would not ever forget it. He approached the desk by one of the walls and looked around the objects on it. A few of their books and toys were left behind, so he carefully looked at every single one of them, wishing he could spend more time playing with his sons and just having fun. "When will I see you all again?" he asked himself, wondering if the answer would ever become certain. He could have chosen to flee Kherson to another part of Ukraine and see his family there, but he knew that right now there were bigger matters at hand. Now he had to do everything in his power to save the city from occupation. The others who were imprisoned with him have gone to their own homes and families, but they agreed to meet once every week and decide on what to do. They would do everything possible to encourage fellow patriots and to terrify the enemy that was unwanted here, but they needed to be extremely careful and take precautions. When Taras exited his son's room, he walked up to a large mirror on the wall, seeing the rugged state he was now in. However, such look would be beneficial. A messy beard that grew out during this month and a bruised face from countless beatings he received would make him less recognizable to anyone who knew him, such as the others who worked in the police with him. He had no idea if any of them were collaborating with the enemy, so he needed to make sure they did not know of his presence in the city. The mission ahead would be extremely hard and could take months, but he was prepared to do everything possible for its success. 2nd of April, Kropivnitsky. Lera was in a hospital getting treated for her injuries. She now had managed to shower and to change her clothes. Ksenia offered some of her own clothes to Lera and was there in a ward with her. A nurse who went by the name Nadia was checking Lera and giving her the necessary treatment. "There are no serious injuries, thankfully," Nadia said. "You might get occasional headaches in the next few days, but they will subside in time. I'll prescribe a medication for you to take when that happens." "Thank you," Lera said in response. "Hey, don't be so glum. You'll feel better soon." "It's not that. I really miss my family. My brother stayed in Mariupol and was taken by the Russian forces. I worry for him. I don't know when I'll see him again. Maybe I never will." Nadia didn't say anything and simply went silent. Her face got sadder. Ksenia was listening to everything too, and she also looked sad when Lera said this. "You know, I cannot imagine what you're going through," Nadia began after a few silent moments. "All I can say is that many good people lost their loved ones because of this cruel invasion. Many people had suffered greatly and lost everything. But we should never give up. A good friend of mine who lost the man she loved said this to me in the early days of the invasion. We're all going through our own personal battle against the darkness, and if we overcome this darkness, only then will prevail and move forward." "This darkness has already consumed me," Lera stated sorrowfully. "It seems that way, but you wouldn't be here if that was the case. You wouldn't be dreaming and hoping to see your brother. When the darkness consumes you, there's no more hope left." Lera thought about those words and decided to take them on board. Perhaps the nurse was right. Keeping her hope alive might just help her get through this. When Nadia finished prescribing the medication and handed it over, Lera and Ksenia left the ward and began making their way through the corridors to exit the hospital. Lera continued pondering on what the nurse told her. She did not want to give up, even though she kept feeling like she should. "You can stay with us for as long as you need," Ksenia said. "My parents' home has a couple of spare rooms. There should be enough space for all of us." "Thanks. I don't know what to do with my life at the moment," Lera admitted whilst looking down at the floor. "I lost everything. I have no direction and no goal. For now your goal is simply to recover, physically and mentally. You've been through hell and need some time to yourself. Perhaps we'll take a walk through some nice places in Vinica. I'll show you around the city. How does that sound? That sounds wonderful. Really, thank you for everything. They left the hospital building and headed for the car where Vadim and Olesia were waiting. The evening sky was already very dark. Lera stopped for a moment and gazed up at it, wondering if Daniil was looking at the same sky at that very moment. I hope you're still alive, my dear brother, she whispered quietly to herself. No, I know you are still alive. I can feel it. I know you're strong, but I still hope you're not suffering. I can never forget all those times we were all together as a family, with our mom and dad being home. Those times will never happen again. They are gone forever. But I will never give up my dream that I will see you again someday. This is the only thing that will keep me going through this pain. 3rd of April, near the Russian border. It was very early in the morning. Daniil was sitting at the back of a truck along with several other people, hands tied. He spent the last 3 days in solitary confinement and on some occasions received beatings by the sadistic Russian soldiers who wanted to teach him a lesson. And now he was being forcefully deported to Russia against his will. What awaited him there was anybody's guess. He already knew that Russian soldiers were deporting ordinary Ukrainian civilians from occupied territories to the mainland Russia, and now he was one of the victims. If a Ukrainian citizen didn't show any defiance and was lucky, they would be sent somewhere more or less normal. If they were in the same situation he was in, then they were likely heading straight to a labor camp or to some remote part of Russia, such as freezing and isolated settlements in Siberia or the Sakhalin island. He looked out of the truck and saw several military checkpoints ahead. They were well guarded with many armed soldiers crawling all over the place. He was genuinely scared. Mariupol during bombardment was hell, but at least it was a familiar place and he was not all alone. Now he was alone and was being taken someplace unfamiliar where he would be treated as less than a human. He looked up to the sky, at the clouds, at the faint beams of sunlight, and he thought of Lera and wondered if she was safe at that very moment. He was thankful that he managed to get her out of Mariupol, but he had no clue where she was and if she was cared for and in safety. She could have been all alone, looking for food and shelter. She could have been hurt. Never give up, my dear sister, he muttered quietly whilst continuing to look up at the sky. We'll reunite. I promise you. I'll do all I can to get out of this place. And once I do, I will find you. 3rd of April, outskirts of Kiev. Alexei was finally able to take a break from helping out and decided to visit Dmitro in the hospital, as well as to check up on Maria and Alina, who were in the same hospital. He got a chance to take a short walk with Max too, who missed him greatly and was delighted to see him. When they got to the hospital entrance, Alexei had to leave Max outside before going in. He approached the reception desk to find out on which floor and ward his friend Dmitro was located. The receptionist had a look through the register carefully and informed Alexei of where to find his friend. Alexei then asked about Maria and Alina too. He was concerned for their well-being ever since the day that he found them in the woods. When he knew where to go, he headed to one of the upper floors to check up on Dmitro first. On the way up the stairs, his mother Irina phoned him. Yes, Mom? How are you? We're fine, dear. And you? Are you safe and healthy? You didn't get hurt, did you? No, I'm okay, Mom. Just came to a hospital to visit Dmitro. Remember I said that he got really hurt? Yes, I remember. We heard the news that the enemy is retreating from Kiev area. Diana and I were discussing of coming back home sometime soon, since it should be safer in Kiev now. Alexei felt a sense of elation coming up inside of him at the news that his mom and sister would be coming back, and that he would see them once again. However, it was still dangerous in the country, as shelling continued happening all over Ukraine. This is great news, Mom, but are you sure about that? It's still not safe, you know. I know, but we would like to be there for you and stick together as a family, just like we stuck together after we lost your father. Alexei didn't argue. It was pleasant for him to hear that his family was coming back home, and that the enemy was on the run. The tide was turning in their favor, and life was returning back to some sense of normality. He then spoke to his sister for a bit. She said she couldn't wait to return home and to see him again. At the end of the conversation, both Irina and Diana wished him to stay safe and for Dmitry to get better too, and then they ended the call. Alexei was now on the correct floor. He just needed to find the right ward. After passing through a few identical-looking corridors, he found the room where his friend was kept. Dmitry was in a hospital bed, having his lunch, and Lilia was there with him. They were both pleased to see Alexei. "Look who's finally come to visit me," Dmitry said jokingly. "I hope you didn't get yourself into too many sticky situations without me." "It's been challenging, but also very eye-opening," Alexei admitted. "A lot has happened these past few days. The orcs are retreating." "Not retreating, they're running away like cowards. I always knew our brethren would teach them a lesson." "How has your health been? I know it's not been easy for you." "Well, it sucks to lose half of your leg. My life will not be the same anymore. They said they'll attach a prosthetic there, so I'll at least be able to walk, but don't be expecting me to run any marathons in my life." "We are lucky that the explosive did not kill you. I was really worried that you were gone at that moment when it exploded and threw you onto the ground." "It will take more than that to kill me, brother." Dmitry always preferred to remain hopeful and trusted his own strength and luck. "Well, you're not invincible," Lilia responded to him at that moment, "so please try to be more careful next time." "I know, I'm sorry." "And you too, Alexei. Keep yourself safe, alright?" Alexei nodded to show his understanding of what Lilia said. Life was fragile, and one small mistake could leave a person a cripple for life, or to rob them of their life entirely. After the recent days, seeing everything he had seen, Alexei understood the fragility of life more than ever before. "Do you know when you're going to get discharged?" he then wondered. "Not a clue. In 2 days they're planning to attach a prosthetic where my leg used to be. Once they do that, they'll have to watch me for a bit to make sure I'm okay." Alexei then sat down and told Dmitry and Lilia about how the last few days had gone for him and what he was doing. They were listening to him with great intrigue. Dmitry regretted that he was not there, feeling like he was missing out. Half an hour flew by, and then Alexei mentioned he'd be visiting him again and left the ward. Maria and Alina were on the next floor up from what Alexei was told, so he made his way there and sought out the ward. He managed to find them without any problems. Maria was awake and was talking to her daughter. Alina smiled when she saw Alexei and greeted him. "I just came to check how you've been recovering," he said to Maria. "Getting better," she replied. "I had a lung infection and was getting very feverish." "You've been through a lot, perhaps that's why." "I wouldn't wish anyone to go through what we've seen in Bucha," Maria stated with a melancholy tone in her voice. "I know. I've seen the aftermath of it all yesterday. I have no words to describe it. A part of me wishes I'd never seen that. I still can't believe that human beings could do something like this. They lost their humanity long ago, and during these days, they tried to take ours away from us too. It's a consolation at least that they've been expelled from there and all the other surrounding areas. With each day they were there, they inflicted torment on people living there. They are demons, you understand? Human beings do not do such things to one another, especially brotherly nations." "I agree with you. They will pay for all that they did. I am sure of it. We will never forgive them that. But I'm thankful that I still have my daughter and that she's unharmed. Thank you, Alexei, for your help. We are both indebted to you. I'm just glad I was there at the time and could help you." "It was more than just help. You saved our lives." Alexei was taken by such words. Until now, he never really saw it that way. But now, realizing that he was the reason both Maria and Alina were safe and healthy, it gave him a sense of encouragement and inner strength. He felt that he was on the right path for the first time in his life, on a path to help people and to do the right thing. Maria grabbed his hand with both of hers. "Thank you again," she said in a quiet voice. "Nowadays, I want to express my gratitude for everything good that happens to us, and for all the good people that cross our paths. So I'm thankful that whoever is watching us from above had brought you into our lives." Alexei thanked her for the kind words, and then promised that he would check up on them both again the next day, and would help them find a place to stay once they left the hospital. He was determined to do everything he could to help them. He knew he didn't have the means to help the whole country, but if he could help at least someone, it meant a lot already and made a difference. 3rd of April. Mykolaiv. Solomia was returning home from her shift, and this time Zlata was with her. Zlata was finally discharged from the hospital and she was coming to live with Solomia. Solomia was glad that she managed to handle everything regarding paperwork so that Zlata could come and live with her, and Zlata was relieved to have someone kind like Solomia in her life after she lost her parents. Solomia knew that the girl missed her parents greatly, and the thought of them was at the back of her mind, but she was determined to provide a sense of security and stability for the poor girl and to surround her with love at such a difficult time. Solomia was still a bit concerned, as she knew it would be very difficult for her to both look after Zlata and to visit her work. She was given 3 days off to help Zlata adjust to a new place, but after that things would be challenging. On top of that, she wanted to arrange for Zlata to have an operation to get a prosthetic arm once things calmed down a bit, and this too wouldn't be easy. Despite that, she felt more determined than at any other time since the invasion began. She felt as though the fluctuations in her life were stabilizing and a clear direction was forming. They both went up the stairs of the apartment building. Solomia unlocked the front door and welcomed her new friend in. Zlata hesitantly entered and began looking around as soon as she walked in. "What is it, Zlata? Everything okay?" "Just had a strange feeling like I had to look around to see if it was safe. What happened to my home and my parents is still haunting me." "I understand, but we'll do all we can to take as many precautions as necessary to keep this little sanctuary of ours safe. Sounds good?" "Yes." Solomia helped her to take the coat off and brought her bags to a spare room. She already had time the previous 2 days to prepare the room for Zlata's arrival, so everything was in its place. She then returned back to the apartment lobby. Zlata was already in the living room, looking around. "Do you feel hungry? Or perhaps you'd like a cup of tea?" Solomia asked. "A cup of tea would be great, but only if you're also going to have it." "I will." Zlata's eyes stopped on a photograph that was standing on one of the shelves of a cabinet. It was one of the photos of Solomia together with Timur. She picked up the photograph with great care and looked at it. "Is this Timur?" she asked. "Yes," Solomia confirmed and looked down at the ground. Remembering Timur still brought a lot of pain to her heart. She kept questioning herself and wondering if she could have done something to save him, and each time she asked herself those questions, she never had clear answers. "He's got a very handsome and kind face," Zlata commented. "I'm so sorry he's not here with us. You look so happy together on here." "Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from the pain of losing him. I really loved him, you know. It wasn't just a relationship. Life with him was everything I've ever dreamed of. His absence will forever leave a mark on my heart. I'm sure I'll learn to live with it, but that's all it will be, just coping and getting used to the pain." Zlata put down the photograph on its original place, and then walked up to Solomia and gave her a big hug with her one good arm. Solomia hugged her back. They both knew what it's like to lose someone dear, and they both wanted to support one another, to face their pain together rather than alone. Solomia did not know what the next few weeks or even months would bring, and when the war would come to an end. But she knew that at least she was no longer alone to face the adversity. She had Zlata, and Zlata had her, and getting through this cruel and horrifying war was now a little bit less painful. Thank you for listening.